Welcome to From Center Ice. My name is Courtney, and that's a wrap. The 2020-2021 Chicago Blackhawks season is officially over. I'm not going to do a whole season wrap-up in this video. I'm going to wait for the exit interviews in order to do that, but I will talk about the game that they played tonight because the Blackhawks ended their season with the most 2021 Chicago Blackhawks game that could ever be played. Let's start with a couple stats, shall we? The Blackhawks were outshot 50-23 in this game by the Dallas Stars. Poor Colin Delia, he was back in net tonight. Kevin Lankinen got the game last night, and he looked great, but there's only so much that the guy could do, and all of the goals that Dallas scored came off of atrocious Blackhawks turnovers. Or if they weren't turnovers, they were just horrible breakdowns in the defensive zone. It was mind-boggling to watch, but it's what we've seen all season, so it shouldn't have been so surprising. Nikita Zadorov and Ian Mitchell, they had horrible games tonight, and yet I don't think either one of them even missed a shift. Not all of the defenders looked bad, but I will get to that, but those two just stood out because, whoa, not good nights for either one of them, and that's not great for Nikita Zadorov, seeing as he is a restricted free agent this summer. He needs a new contract, and with the signing of Riley Stillman, I don't know where that leaves Zadorov. I could see the Blackhawks moving on from him in the offseason, and to be honest, I wouldn't be too upset with that. I liked his game at the beginning of the year. I thought he was an effective defenseman back there. I liked the idea of what he could bring with the more physical side of the game, laying hits, and we've seen in games throughout the season where more skilled guys have shied away from the play when they come up against him, but it hasn't been consistent, and that's what we heard from Colorado fans, that Zadorov just isn't consistent in his game, and we did see that with the Blackhawks this year. So while I like the idea of the player, the execution with the player's game just didn't go so well. But that's only two guys. I'm pretty sure Zadorov's probably gone in the off season. Who knows with Ian Mitchell? I would give him another season, maybe play some time in Rockford, maybe start again in the NHL. Who knows? It was his first year out of college. I'm not gonna harp on the guy too much. But tonight's game was not good for him. But it wasn't only those two. The Blackhawks went 0 for 4 on the power play. On the penalty kill, they went 2 for 3, allowing 1 power play goal, but it is Dallas. They are pretty good at those power play things. The hits were pretty even, 36-35 in favor of Dallas. Shockingly, the Blackhawks don't seem to hit a lot, but ever since they added the guy to their roster with the name of Mike Hardman, that's ramped up a little bit. During the game, I know that Pat and Eddie said that during his young NHL career so far, he has 37 hits. I don't know what he ended up with at the end of this game. That was near the middle-ish of the game, and I know that he was throwing around the body a little more, but wow, they might have found something in this guy, somebody who can bring that gritty style of play, but also has some skill. We saw him get his first NHL goal, and of course last night we saw him set up Mackenzie Entwistle for his first NHL goal. Now going back to the shots on goal stats, let's break it down by period. In the first, the Blackhawks were outshot 14-5. In the second period, they were outshot 16-5. So if you are counting, by the end of the second period, they were being outshot 30-10. In the third period, they were outshot 17-8. So as they went into overtime, the Blackhawks were being outshot 47-18. That, my friends, is very bad. And in overtime, they held the shots on goal advantage 5-3. Now, don't get too excited about that because at the end of regulation, the Dallas Stars took a 4-minute major penalty by high-sticking Connor Murphy, so the Blackhawks had the majority of that power play time going into the overtime period. And they only managed to get 5 shots on goal and not score on any of them because the Blackhawks lost this game, and they lost this game 5-4. Not only did the Blackhawks lose this game 5-4, but there were 2 separate times where they had a 2-goal lead in this game. We just went over the shots on goal and how they broke down by period. Yeah, the Blackhawks 2 separate times had a 2-goal lead. And Dallas forced it to overtime. And then the Blackhawks power play, shocker, I know, could not score during 4 minutes of power play time, especially with the majority of that being in overtime. Are you seeing now why I said this was the most 2021 Chicago Blackhawks game that they could possibly end this season with? They had no reason to be in this game. It shouldn't have even gone to overtime if you were watching how it was played out. But Alex DeBrincat sure had something to say about that, and Colin Delia sure had something to say about that. So the Blackhawks picked up the loser point, not that it even matters. And then they proceeded to lose in the last minute of overtime. Even better than that, Jason Robertson was the guy to score. He had a 2-on-1 with Jamie Benn heading into the Blackhawks zone. One defender was back and Patrick Kane was the other guy skating back. But once he saw the shot being taken, he kind of just peeled off instead of skating toward the net. Had he kept going toward Robertson, he could have potentially lifted the stick and not allowed that goal. So Patrick Kane on defense strikes again, because this is 2021. This is the Chicago Blackhawks. That is what happens. Oh, and he did nothing on the power play all night. So it really is just the perfect game to sum up this season for the Hawks. I truly thought that they were going to go out on another high note. They won last night. I thought they were going to win tonight. Again, they had the 2-0 lead, then they had the 4-2 lead. This looks great, right? Oh, Dallas comes back, ties it up 4-4. That's okay. It goes to overtime. The Hawks have been pretty good in overtime this year, surprisingly. But, there it is. There is the power play. They just had to go on the power play. And we all know what happens when the Blackhawks are on the power play. Nothing. A whole lot of nothing. And that is exactly what we got again tonight. Patrick Kane had no business being out there in overtime as much as he was. And I was saying, why not put Brandon Hagel out there? He has been Mr. Overtime this season, scoring 2 huge overtime goals for this team. And he did eventually make his way out there in overtime, but it was way too late. They couldn't set anything up. He was standing at the front of the net. The other guys just couldn't get it there to get him a chance at a rebound or a second chance. And so clearly they did not score in overtime because Jason Robertson came down and scored on Colin Delia. And my goodness, Delia deserved better in this game. It was an absolute shooting gallery from the Dallas Stars. And not so much the Blackhawks, seeing as they had 23 shots on goal and they had 10 shots on goal through the first 2 periods of the game. So it was just going swell. But Alex DeBrincat did walk away from this game with a goal and an assist. He opened up the scoring. So that is goal number 32 on the season for DeBrincat. You just have to wonder what number he would hit if it was a full 82 game season. But it's not. It's a 56 game season and he still hit 32 goals. That is just an incredible year for number 12. And he ended the year on a 7-game goal streak. There are a lot of negatives to take away from this season. Alex DeBrincat is not one of them. What also isn't one of them is some of our young defenders. While a lot of things obviously went wrong tonight, seeing as the Dallas Stars had 50 shots on goal, Wyatt Kalynuk, Alec Regula, and Nicholas Beaudin all had pretty good games, I thought. I was especially interested in the Kalynuk-Regula defensive pairing. They seemed to be very solid when they were out there together. We saw it more in the first period, and they were more split up in the later 2. I wish they hadn't been. Maybe this game would have turned out a little differently. But while they were out there, I really liked what I saw. And Nicholas Beaudin, he had a very good game. His game in the NHL has sort of been up and down this season, but he's still a rookie. He's looked more good than he has bad. I think he will come back next year and have a very impressive season, or at least I hope so. I think he's very intriguing as a player. He can be very solid on the defensive side of the game, but he also has an offensive flair to him as well, much like the other guys that we see out there, like Alec Regula and Wyatt Kalynuk and Ian Mitchell when he's on his game. It is very much recency bias, and recency as in tonight, because Mitchell had a very bad game, but I just find it hard to mention his name with those other young defenders. And next season we will get to see Adam Boqvist again. His season was cut short due to a broken wrist, and he missed a bunch of time because he got COVID. It was a very rough year for him. Boqvist and Doc both of the prospects that the Blackhawks have drafted in the top 10 lately have had a very rough time this year. Kirby Dach, of course, breaking his wrist in that pre-tournament game with Team Canada. He came back, he played a few games, he looked decent, he was putting up some points here and there, and then the scar tissue in his wrist got re-aggravated, so he missed the last few games. And then, of course, Adam Boqvist going out with the broken wrist. He also had a concussion, and then there was COVID. It was just a mad year. There was madness flying everywhere. But this game had a little of everything, and it really was the perfect wrap up to the season. They made you feel so good at the beginning. They inserted hope into your brain and into your heart. And then it was kind of up and down, but they still looked good, and you felt like they were going to win. They were going to do good things. And then it just kind of started falling off, and then they looked very bad in that power play in overtime. And then they got scored on in overtime, so that means they lost the game. So it ended very badly. Does that sound like this season to you? Because that sounds like this season to me. I was really hoping that Brandon Hagel would get that 10th goal of the season. Unfortunately, he didn't. He had a few chances to get it, but either Jake Oettinger was there to make the save, or the pucks just didn't bounce his way. So he didn't hit double digits, but you gotta say that he was one of the most effective players on the season, one of the biggest standouts, one of the biggest bright spots on the year for the Blackhawks. There were a lot of players who had their moments in the spotlight, but his was just kind of consistent throughout all of the games that he played. It took a while to get that first goal, but once he got the first one and then he got the second one, the points just started rolling in for him, and he finished, I want to say, in the top 5 on the team in scoring. So of course, good for him. And then there was the goaltending. Poor Colin Delia. He played 2 games to start the year, and then he sat for 4 months. There was a brief stint in Rockford, but then he came back and he sat some more. Meanwhile, Kevin Lankinen and Malcolm Subban were getting all of the starts. And then he comes in at the end of the year and really makes an argument for being in the conversation in the goaltending crease for next season. We'll see how it goes. Of course, they still have to get through the summer. Moves will be made. There is the expansion draft because the Seattle Kraken are officially a part of the NHL now. So who knows who we're gonna lose. There will be more videos about that as we see who is protected, who is unprotected, and once that gets closer. And I guess going off of that, yeah, the season is over for the Blackhawks, but there will still be many videos to make. I will do a season wrap up. I might talk about some players individually, maybe some positions individually, and there will always be signing news, trade news. There will be plenty to talk about. And then there's the draft, then the expansion draft. There's a lot. It's called the off season, but is it really the off season? Maybe for the players, but not for the people who talk about these teams. And I do have some plans for the playoffs, so keep your eye open for that as well. We're not going anywhere. Videos will still be hitting this YouTube channel. We're still going to be recording the podcast. We'll be around. There's plenty to talk about, and at least on the podcast, if there's no hockey news, you'll just hear us going back and forth about whatever we're up to, and that's always fun to listen to. But for now, and for tonight, the 2020-2021 Chicago Blackhawks season has officially ended. I know that I am going to miss watching Blackhawks hockey like tomorrow, and I said this on Twitter, but for right now, I am so glad that this season is over. It has been so up and down, it's been so exhausting, games pretty much every night, and then you throw in the Ice Hogs. It's either they're playing at the exact same time or they're on alternating nights, so one night's the Blackhawks, the next night's the Ice Hogs, then the Blackhawks play again. There's no time to breathe. Usually that would be amazing, but in the shortened, condensed schedule, it's just kind of exhausting. And the Ice Hogs were never playing for anything. As the season was winding down, the Blackhawks weren't playing for anything. And while you're watching the games, you just get really caught up in the wins and losses. So it's going to be fun here in the off season, taking a more objective look at the season, talking about what went well, what went very wrong, guys that stood out, guys that maybe won't see the ice again in Chicago next season. There's gonna be a lot to look at. I'm excited for it. I hope you are as well. It has been a crazy year, so thank you so much for sticking with me through this. If you are new, welcome to the madness. It's only going to get even more mad because before you know it, the next season is going to be here. So get your rest in while you can, get your breathing in while you can, maybe start meditating a little bit. Any way to get through this off season that you can. No more Blackhawks hockey. The Ice Hogs do have 2 games left this upcoming weekend, so if you want to check out the prospects, you can watch them over on AHL TV. And both of those games are against the Chicago Wolves. Those are always very interesting games. The Ice Hogs were down 4-0 today and then came back, sort of. They still lost, but the score ended up being 6-5. So the games are pretty fun to watch. I would highly recommend checking out the last 2. All of that being said, thank you again so much for sticking with me through this season, watching these videos, leaving comments. If there's anything you would like to hear more of in the off season, any prospects you want to hear about, any full-time NHLers you want to hear my thoughts on, leave those in the comments below. I'll take note of all of them. But in the meantime, we will wait for the exit interviews. I'm sure those will be tomorrow or the next day, and then I will wrap up this season. Put a nice big red bow on it so that we can just move past it eventually. Again, it wasn't all bad. There were a lot of positives to take away from it as well, but there were also a lot of negatives. We will go over all of it. That should be fun! But if you would like to hear more from me or from Center Ice, head on over to FromCenterIce.com. You'll find links to everywhere that you can find us. I will have more written content coming out over the summer. I will have more time to dedicate thought space to writing instead of watching games. So that's something to look out for. I post all the links to that stuff over on Twitter and on Facebook, so if you are a social media person, you can follow us on all of the places. The links to all of those are down in the description. But I will not catch you after the next game. There is no more next game unless you're talking about the Ice Hogs, but for the Blackhawks, the season is over. It ended probably how a lot of us expected it to, but they gave us a lot of hope at different times during this year. So it didn't end the way that a lot of us hoped that it would, just maybe that we knew it would in the back of our minds. It was one hell of a run. I've loved talking to each and every one of you. I hope that you stick around through the off season and for next season, but I will catch you after the exit interviews. Bye guys. Thank you all for watching. Please hit that subscribe button to catch more From Center Ice content. If you could, hit the like button on this video, maybe share it with a friend or two. And while you're here, check out the podcast playlist and catch up on some old episodes. We will catch y'all next time. Bye!